The ancient ocean was not only dangerous, it was a true liquid nightmare where creatures with huge eyes hunted through endless darkness. Some of those predators are still around today, hiding in places humans have barely visited. Imagine water so deep that sunlight stopped reaching you half a mile above. In this pitch, black and bone-crushing emptiness, life existed. It did more than survive. It flourished. It evolved into strange forms. It grew huge, and it became very skilled at killing prey. Without sunlight, there were no plants. So everything down there had to solve the problem of dinner. Some species evolved giant eyes to catch the faintest trace of light. Others gave up on sight altogether and went blind. A few even made their own light and waved it like an underwater hunter carrying a flashlight to lure victims. These lineages were already old when dinosaurs were still learning to walk upright, and we only know the ones that left fossils behind. There were likely many worse creatures that we will never discover. Now we will look at which prehistoric sea monsters once prowled the bottom of this ocean. This mesopelagic species lives along outer continental shelves and over seamounts. The frightening part is what happens when it opens its mouth. The Goblin Shark can launch its entire jaw forward about a foot beyond its head. There is a second mouth where none should be, packed with long needle-like teeth, snatching whatever is unlucky enough to be nearby. This animal has used the same tactic for about 125 million years. We know this because fossils of goblin sharks keep turning up that look nearly identical to the ones swimming around today. It stays so deep that almost nothing troubles it. It drifts through the dark, waiting for something to pass close to its face. Then it shoots that jaw out and hauls dinner back into its mouth. No chasing, no struggling, just plain mechanical efficiency. And speaking of sharks, there is another living nightmare still around today. Frilled sharks look ordinary until you see one up close. Then you notice it carries about 300 teeth set in 25 rows, and every tooth is shaped like a tiny trident. This shark is basically a 6-foot-long swimming mouth that has used the same routine for about 80 million years. It snakes through the water like an eel, smooth and wavy until something drifts too close. Then it lunges and swallows prey that can be half its own size whole. No chewing, no ripping it apart, just straight down the hatch. Frilled sharks spend the day in caves and crevices, then head out at night to hunt. They are almost never seen at the surface. For most of human history, we did not even know they were there. We kept finding their teeth in old rock and assumed they were gone. Then, in the 1800s, an unlucky fisherman hauled one up, and people realized these animals had never left. Right now, somewhere in the deep Atlantic, a frilled shark is likely curled in a dark crevice, waiting for night so it can hunt with the same 300 tooth mouth design that worked just fine when dinosaurs still walked around. This creature was so effective that about 80 million years ago, evolution decided that was frightening enough and kept the design the same. A About 430 million years ago, the seafloor was splitting open and blasting out water so hot it should have killed everything for miles around. Instead, worms moved in and built crowded colonies. They were tube worms that learned to live beside underwater volcanoes by partnering with bacteria. The bacteria ate the toxic chemicals coming out of the vents, and the worms ate the bacteria. In fact, the same setup still happens in the same places, with the same kinds of bacteria. After about 400 million years, tube worms are still the only creatures tough enough to live right next to underwater lava geysers. The really surprising part is that these vent sites do not last very long. The volcano shuts off the chemistry shifts, and the whole community has to leave and find a new vent somewhere else. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like so YouTube can recommend it to even more people. And if you're watching on your phone, tap the hype button right below. And speaking of ancient survivors, some fish took hiding to an extreme level. In 1938, a museum curator got a call about a strange fish caught off South Africa. She went to see it and realized she was looking at something people thought had been extinct for 66 million years. Scientists had found coelacanth fossils for decades, tracing them back to fish that lived 360 million years ago. They assumed these animals disappeared with the dinosaurs. They were living in caves about 600 feet down, coming out at night to hunt, and basically following the same lifestyle their far distant ancestors had been living since before trees appeared. The fish caught in 1938 caused such a stir that a reward was offered to anyone who could find another. It actually took 14 years to locate a second fish that was believed to have vanished since the Cretaceous period. When researchers finally studied living coelacanths, they learned these fish had changed very little in all that time. Same unusual fins, same unusual skulls, and the same unusual way of giving birth to live young instead of laying eggs. But other ancient creatures chose another way to survive in the oceans. That is what the ancient seafloor looked like when sea lilies ruled the scene. These animals reached about 60 feet on tall stalks and drifted with the current, spreading feather-like arms to catch food as it passed by. They were animals that only looked like underwater flowers. They carpeted the seafloor in thick groves that stretched for miles across wide basins. Some of these sea gardens rose higher than a 6-story building. All of them held firm to the bottom by root-like parts and waved their arms again and again to grab a meal. For hundreds of millions of years, living as a giant flower of the sea seemed to be the winning plan, era after era. Sea lily fossils are so common that whole limestone cliffs consist of their shattered stems and arms, stacked in layers. Most vanished during the Great Die-Off at the end of the Permian period. But a few species said, "You know what? We will just move deeper." They slipped downslope into darker water and kept the same routine in the abyss. People did not realize they were still alive until the 1800s, when someone hauled one up with a dredge from the deep ocean. Today, sea lilies still live down there, doing much the same thing they have done for 300 million years, standing on the seafloor, waving their arms in the current, patiently catching whatever drifts by. They are not as tall as before, and there are not nearly as many, but they remain living flowers on the ocean floor even now. What has surprised you the most so far? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future updates. Now we are going to talk about a prehistoric marine reptile called Abyssosaurus. Abyssosaurus literally means bottomless lizard, and it might be the most hardcore name any ancient reptile ever had. This animal was a plesiosaur that chose the deep ocean as its permanent home. Not just quick hunting trips, but long-term life in the abyss. To do that, it evolved the heaviest bones known for a marine reptile. Dense, thick skeleton that acted like built-in weights and pulled it into the dark. It carried lungs about the size of barrels, so it could store enough air for long, deep dives. In that pitch black world, it glided just over the seafloor with huge eyes searching for anything careless enough to roam the emptiness. Small head and long neck made it perfect for snapping forward and seizing squid or fish before they could react. Abyssosaurus kept up this way of life for millions of years in the early Cretaceous. Its giant eyes faced straight toward the roof of the sea. It spent its life watching the surface, waiting for shapes to pass so it could spot a silhouette in the faint light that reached down. When it saw a target, it rose from the bottom like a creature from a sea horror film and seized whatever swam above it. And here is the truly strange detail. Scientists have found stones inside its stomach. Not fish bones, not squid beaks, but stones. When they finally meet a predator, their response is to curl into a tight ball and wait it out. No sprinting, no striking back, just total defense until the attacker loses interest and moves on. They are basically the sea's version of that friend who handles problems by acting like nothing is wrong. After 30 million years of evolution, their game plan is to eat only every few years and avoid trouble by lying low. Researchers discovered a fossil that looked as if someone bent a giant squid shell into a paperclip and decided that was a fine way to survive for 2 centuries. That fossil is called Diplomocearas. This creature outlasted whole dinosaur groups known for long lifespans. Most Ammonites coiled their shells into neat spirals because that works well and is efficient. But Diplomocearas looked at that blueprint and said, actually, what if I grew in a big U-shape instead? It then drifted through ancient seas for about 200 years, resembling a 10-foot tall paperclip with dangling tentacles. The form was so strange that when paleontologists first studied the fossils, they thought they were seeing several different animals mashed together by chance. Diplomocearas likely floated upright with its head hanging from the bottom of the U, staying in one spot and snapping up whatever passed close. Female anglerfish carry a built-in fishing pole tipped with a glowing bait. They hold still in the deep black, slowly waving that tiny light until a curious animal drifts close to check it out. When the target gets near, she snaps her jaws open and gulps down whatever was careless enough to fall for the trick. That is not even the strangest detail. The real surprise comes when a male finds a partner. He bites her body and never lets go. Not for the rest of his life. Over time, his mouth fuses to her skin. His blood vessels merge with hers, and he ends up turning into a permanent sperm-making lump on her side. This has been the routine for roughly 50 million years. These fish are ancient. For all that time, males have latched onto females and turned into living, breathing add-on organs whose single purpose is reproduction. Some females host more than one male at a time, so they swim through the dark with several small partners fused to their bodies like passengers that never disembark. Evolution faced the problem of finding mates in endless night and gave a blunt answer. It is as if nature said, "You know what? We will turn the males into parasites." The plan works so well that dozens of anglerfish species now use the same unsettling strategy in the deep. The female handles the hunting, the survival, and the day-to-day work while carrying what are basically living sperm banks that once were independent fish. It may be the most one-sided partnership in the animal world, and for reasons that suit the species, both sides appear completely fine with the deal. But long before any of these monsters appeared, something made a very bad choice. Trilobites held the sharpest vision in the seas for 200 million years. Their compound eyes used crystal-clear lenses that let them see better than most animals alive today. Then some of them turned toward the deep ocean and decided to give it all up. They simply abandoned sight altogether. They ended up with smooth, empty patches where those incredible eyes once sat. No pupils, no lenses, nothing. They chose blindness and moved into the darkest zones of the sea, spending the next few 100 million years feeling through the mud for dead things to eat. There had to be an advantage. That is the point of evolution. New helpful traits spread, and the species makes it through. And it seems the plan worked, because blind trilobites filled the deep ocean. Thousands of them felt their way through the dark with their antennae, bumping into one another, stepping on dead fish, living their best lives without any idea what anything really looked like. But the modern deep ocean has its own kind of unstoppable scavengers that look like unsettling bugs. Giant isopods are what you get if a normal pill bug hit the gym and lived on pure protein for 30 million years. These animals grow to about the size of a football and can go 5 years without a meal. They also look seriously creepy. One giant isopod in captivity refused food for half a decade and then died. It almost felt like a statement that humans were not worthy caretakers. They live on the seafloor where food is so rare that when something finally dies and sinks to their world, it feels like a holiday morning. Hundreds of these huge sea bugs can pick up the scent from miles away and rush into a carcass like the most unsettling family get-together. When they reach a dead whale or fish, they eat until they are so full they can hardly move. It really is like a holiday dinner. Meet the Ophthalmosaurus. This reptile lived 150 million years ago and carried eyes as wide as dinner plates. Each eyeball measured about 9 inches across, which is larger than most basketballs. Those eyes were for seeing in total darkness while diving deeper than most nuclear submarines go today. It could hold its breath for more than 20 minutes and plunge over 3,000 feet into water, so black you could not see your own hand. While other sea reptiles stayed in the shallows eating fish, Ophthalmosaurus was down in the void, using those giant eyes to spot the faintest flashes of bioluminescence. Imagine something bigger than a dolphin, shaped like a torpedo, with eyes so large they needed rings of bone to keep them from collapsing under pressure. And it was not the only animal doing this. Fossils show these creatures all across Europe. So diving into the abyss to hunt tentacled prey was a common job back then, which says a lot about how intense the Jurassic oceans really were. But what if being scary did not require giant eyes at all? Phosphorosaurus measured only about 12 feet long. In the realm of ancient sea hunters, that size is basically tiny. It carried eyes that pointed straight ahead. Which other animals have forward-facing eyes? Please comment below. Both eyes aimed forward, giving Phosphorosaurus sharp depth perception that would make a trained marksman jealous. And those eyes were large. Not on the level of Ophthalmosaurus, but likely big enough to fill about half the skull. So I suspect this little hunter was active at night, While the big mosasaurs slept after a day of stirring up fear, Phosphorosaurus was only getting started. This one was designed like a surgeon's blade, and some deep-sea hunters went for the simplest plan. Viperfish have teeth so long they stick out even when the mouth is closed. These are not ordinary teeth. They are real fangs that curve back toward the eyes because there is nowhere else for them to fit. This fish has refined its terrifying look for about 15 million years. And honestly, it got it right from the start. The fangs are so oversized that if a person had the same proportions, they would scrape the ground while walking. Here is the disturbing twist. Viperfish use those fangs by slamming into prey at top speed. You might think leading with teeth would wreck the skull. They evolved a built-in crumple zone. The first bone behind the head works like a shock absorber that keeps the brain safe every time they spear something. So this fish waits in the dark, perfectly still, for a victim to pass. Then it launches forward and skewers whatever is unlucky enough to drift close. There is no chase. There is no clever tactic. Just simple, ruthless, deadly efficiency. They belong to the order Ammonite, a group of extinct arthropods whose closest living relatives are cuttlefish. All members of this order, including Parapuzotia, carried spiral shells made of calcium carbonate, the same mineral found in snail shells. Studies of these shells show the calcium carbonate was arranged as prisms, or crystals, or other forms depending on the layer. The shells gave solid protection from predators and also created a home for many tiny organisms. In Parapuzotia, the body size was immense because it was truly a sea monster, holding the title of the largest known ammonite and the heaviest crustacean ever, larger than the giant squid and the colossal squid. The biggest Parapuzotia had a shell up to 5 meters, or 11 feet across, which means that with its soft tissue, these individuals could weigh more than one, at a weight of about 5 tons, with nearly half of that coming from the shell. And if it were somehow possible to remove the shell from one of these giants, experts think the body would straighten to a total length of 60 feet or 18 meters, about twice the length of a whale shark. Such size gave Parapuzotia another title as the heaviest invertebrate of all time. What they did with that size is still unknown because all members of their order and their closest relatives are extinct. So their everyday lives remain a mystery. What we do know is that specimens have been found across the world. Yet even that strangeness pales beside the ocean's first aliens, Carnia. 565 million years ago, before fish, before any sharks, before almost any animal you would recognize, the deep seafloor was covered with forms that looked like they were designed by aliens who had never seen Earth life. Charnia was a 2-meter-tall feather made of living tissue that had no mouth, no stomach, no eyes, and no way to move. It simply stood on the seafloor, swaying with the current, absorbing nutrients straight through its skin from the surrounding water for tens of millions of years. There were no predators yet, so nothing disturbed it. There was no competition for food, so it did not need to hunt. There was no pressure to evolve fast, so it stayed the same, doing almost nothing for longer than complex life has existed anywhere else. These creatures covered the ancient seafloor in wide fields. Thousands of them, all alike, all still, all standing there, taking in chemicals from seawater while the rest of Earth figured out what evolution was meant to do. There are likely millions more species, even stranger, that we still do not know about, because that is the unsettling thing about the ancient ocean. We have found many species, and yet many others remain unknown. There were probably monsters down there that we would call aliens because of how bizarre they were. What do you think is still down there today? Tell me in the comments. If you like this video, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. And if you want to watch another of my videos, check out the one on the screen. If you'd like me to make a video on this topic, let me know in the comments. And for now, goodbye and see you next time.